I don't know. I don't even have the desktop application. I just use the browser.
Oh, there we go. It's removed. All right. First question I had was, what is a good quad workout? Sets, reps, and exercises. I guess you want to we just go over like a quad day.
Sure.
Yeah. Figured you like this question.
Yeah. All right. I mean, my personal take, I typically program a little bit of hamstrings before quads, even on a quad dominant leg day. And potentially some glutes or adductors if that person needs to bring those up over their quads or just, growth everywhere. Because number one, like once you get a little bit of blood in your lower body, you get the antagonistic muscle of the quad and hamstring activated. You generally have better you generally have better mobility and just get more out of a compound movement like a leg press or a squat. Or like your quad is still going to take most of the load. You're still going to have hamstring engagement like during eccentrics on those types of movements and such. Right. So I just look at it as like a safe way to work up your leg into a heavy compound movement without taking anything away from the quad. I throw in like two sets of hamstring curl, maybe one with an intensifier, same thing, two sets of like an one or the other. I don't like too much in front of the quad work. And then, you could kind of get on with however you structure like the hack squat compound movement after that, or like I personally like putting leg press next after that, doing to get the knee warmed up, maybe a lateral one, and hit a heavy compound squat, and then you could put more accessory work at the end, like leg extensions. Some people are doing intensifiers on those leg extensions. Uh,
Yeah, I agree. Like you said, I think starting with like a hamstring curl of some sort, whether it's a seated or a lying, even like a single leg is good, right? Get some blood into the pre-exhaust the hamstrings, and then I think after that, like some people will start with leg extensions, right? Like you said, you could even end with them too. I think that would really depend more or less like how well like somebody needs to like warm their knees up. Um, like maybe you could do like a single leg extension for warm up and then go into like a compound, like, a leg press, right? Then a squat movement. After that, maybe like a split squat or maybe another squat movement, right? Depends of how much some food somebody's eating, how their recovery is. And then, like you said, maybe you could just put like a higher rep double leg extension at the end, right? A couple sets to kind of finish like that burnout. But what would you say? Four movements for quads? I think if you do them right, that is like you should be struggling to get out of the
oh
gym.
yeah,
Yeah, you should be struggling to get out of the gym for sure. So,
I think that's
um,
perfect.
yeah, especially when like your tempo and your control is there. So yeah. Um,
Yeah, dude, you could take legs to, like, another level of intensity than
for
anything.
sure. Yeah,
'Cause
they can
they're,
take a beating.
yeah, they're the biggest, strongest muscles in our body. We walk around there.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, they could
So,
take
like,
an
a hard
absolute
leg day,
beating.
fucking, like nothing else.
Yeah, dude, they could take a beating. All right. What are the first markers you look at before putting somebody back on a PED cycle?
Very constantly out this question.
It's like, yeah, it's a very, I mean, I guess it's a pretty common, popular question because not many people like know like when to get blood work, right? Or like what to look for before they start a cycle, right? What's the proper time frame and whatnot. So I guess I would say that's probably why. I mean, how many people have come to us, right? Whether it's been having no coach or previous coaches and they've never even gotten blood work. So I get why it's such a popular question. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So, I guess it starts with, like, when you get blood work. So if you are on the cycle, no earlier than 6 weeks. So you wanna get sure you know what's going on. If you're coming out of a season, I would even push that back a little bit further so that your thyroid recover a bit more because it's gonna take some beating during your dieting. But from there, I was doing your labs, we're looking at things like your temperatures, so your bar, your consistency, not so much on the blood urea nitrogen and creatinine, more on the ratio of those um, team sex hormones where you nothing, testosterone, hormone. Then obviously like your lipids and other cardiac related markers like C-reactive protein, your blood glucose, A1C. I mean, like, you're looking at everything.
Absolutely. Yeah, like you said, definitely liver and kidney markers. Want to make sure those two are great. Lipids for sure, because PEDs, as you know, we know are going to affect lipid health in some one way or the other, in some way or the other. So, making sure obviously they're in a good spot before borderline, risking tampering with them, I think we both know is a good idea. And obviously having some type of supplementation use from a health supplement standpoint for lipids in cycle, of course. Um, Other than that, making sure your fasting insulin, glucose, and A1C are in a good spot, I think is really important as well. Um, yeah, other than that, you pretty much covered everything else.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, one thing to note, if you get labs and so many things are skewed, don't like immediately freak out. Okay. Because you could improve this. I mean, it takes a little bit longer, but like you do a 90, 60 day, 90-day period where you're having proper diet, implementation, like you can pretty much.
oh yeah, absolutely. Yep, yep, yep. All right. When do you recommend adding in T4 as opposed to just relying on T3 usage alone in a prep? It's a good question.
That is a really good question. So in a perfect world, you have blood work from a client that has, come out of a diet phase, and you could get a sense where their thyroid typically is, their normal level, say post show. Because everybody has down regulation and different. The T3 is generally what has more impact on the metabolic rate, if
Mhm.
that's, out of whack. Not as it's not as heavily affected by dieting, but it can just so T4, to be honest, I rarely use it at this point because most of the people that I'm putting on stages here I've worked with before, and I've seen enough labs to know that like, I don't think they're necessarily going to need it.
Right.
But if I have somebody I know that they do have down regulation on their teeth, do have a few clients that I know do, that's when we're using the teeth.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I think just to kind of, I guess, answer this person's question of when to add T4, and I think that would be I guess, a better way. I guess that's what they're really asking, right? So, like you said, when we check blood work, and if they're like having like a lower range or like a low free T4 on lab work, obviously, right, there's going to be a need for it there. Um, I think also like a low TSH, that would be pretty important as well. Um, and then I think too, maybe sometimes in a longer prep, obviously, like when there's like a longer term T3 usage, right? Where like there could be the possibility of a lower free T4, then you put it in. But I mean, neither of us use like T3 at a high dose anyway. You know what I mean? Anywhere between 25 and 37 and a half. I think if you need any more than 37 and a half, like there's something else going on. You know what I mean? At the
Yeah, more than
max.
more than likely, you were probably just pushed.
Yeah, or you were pushed too hard before it was introduced.
Mm,
You know what I mean? So, um, that I mean, I think that's really covers it. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, also,
Um, so this question was asked by the same person. Um, in your opinion, do you think modern day bodybuilding has become too dependent on drugs? It's another good question. Same person asked it.
yeah. Uh,
I
I
think
don't
it
know. I guess
depends on
it
who it
depends
is.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it depends on like. I feel like it depends on also what era we're talking about, right?
Right.
But if we keep comparing it to, like, back when we first got into it, like, nah, I'd say guys blasted more gear back then, probably. Um,
Ye- I also think there was a lot less fake shit then too.
that's true.
Like I think like if those guys had like 5 milligram D balls, they like the tabs, they knew they were like taking 5 milligrams of D ball. You know what I mean? Now, like you don't know, like I mean, you got dudes buying Masteron now, swearing that it's Masteron and it's like Test Pro.
Alright. Yeah, I don't know, it's kinda hard to say because I feel like the trend right now is a lot of influencers and, like, even pro bodybuilders that are a lot of them just say they think people like loose dosages. We know
Dude. Oh yeah.
stuff like that. Uh, so I think a lot of people are actually running with that. On the opposite end, there's always gonna be the people that are just like getting more drinks, yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. What are our thoughts on the explosion of peptides? So I mean, we've covered that quite a bit. I mean, we use some. We think obviously there's a usage and I guess a supplemental factor with some of them, but there's some we obviously just the way I put it is people have been getting in freaking shape and winning pro cards and winning bodybuilding shows without peptides for 50 years. Sure, they're a good tool, but again, they're just like anything. They're only going to supplement what you're putting into your sleep and recovery, your training, and your food. You know what I mean? Like, people are like, "What's the tesamorelin now?" It's like people swear it's just going to burn all their belly fat away. It's like, okay, well, like, are you actually like getting your heart rate up? Are you burning enough calories to lose weight, like, and burn fat? So you got to do everything else. I think, I mean, we know red is great, right? We both use it with people. Like we know what it's going to do and can do, but can you still win a bodybuilding show and gain muscle and improve and have great off seasons without it and all this shit nowadays? Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just what's popular in the industry right now. A
Yeah.
lot of people are making a lot of money on it, so that's why that's all of
Yep.
course gonna be the people that just and take everything.
Dude,
They're useful.
I mean, you and I both have seen, dude, there's guys with suboptimal physiques who are taking like 12 peptides.
Mhm.
How many peptides have you taken?
I mean, 4 or 5 different ones.
Yeah, but like, yeah, but like that's like normal nowadays in bodybuilding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm taking none. I'm not taking it. That's uh,
It's not a peptide, yeah. Yeah. All right. All right. So, um, do you guys this literally word for it says, do you guys think a health phase is just an ex is just an excuse for somebody to stay on gear? I don't- I
we're
get
coming off gear. That's
I know, like I guess like the whole term health phase, I guess when people are like on test or just HRT or whatnot, like is it just an excuse of a term? The way I read this, like for people to like stay on test, and in my opinion, no. Um, so here's how I'll put it: if I had a 21-year-old who came to me and he was already using PEDs, right, and he knew being a competitive bodybuilder was what he wanted to do and he was already on them, right? That's the key word here. When he came into me starting to coach him, when pulled him off of cycle, I wouldn't have him on test. I would have him blast in fertility stuff so we could, kind of play, damage control in a sense, right? The best we can. Because obviously we know fertility is going to get messed up to a certain degree, obviously with PED use. At that age, I would have him come off. Somebody like you or I, we're done having kids, you know what I mean? Sure, and at this point, after so many years in our 30s, it's like, how high is our natural test really going to go if we came off of an HRT dose, right? So I think it's situational, but I don't, when somebody's doing things for the right reason, I don't think that's an excuse to just stay on test. I think it's situationally dependent, if that makes sense.
yeah, yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah. Do you guys find your clients too obsessed with the scale weight versus how their actual physique is changing? If this is the case, how do you guide your clients through this?
Yeah, it's definitely. a lot of clients that are very concerned and obsessed with the scale. Which I understand because that's like the only metric that you're actually looking at. Like clients not going to be able to analyze their own check-in pictures. They're really great.
Right.
Um, I mean, what was the second part of the question? How do we what?
Um, how do you guys talk a client through when they are that focused on the scale?
Oh, well, I'll just like show pictures of,
Yeah.
let's say 2 weeks ago they were the same weight, but the look is way different. Like I'll just show them like
Yeah.
this is evidence that the scale isn't the only measure, the only variable here. We're like, let's say somebody checks in super flat, and then we refeed them, and they check in again a day later, and the scale is up, but they look fucking peeled because their muscle is pushing against the skin. It's like this is why the scale isn't, you know, the end all be all here. It's just one of the variables that we use.
Yeah. Yeah, I think up front, like if a new client is very focused on the scale, which I think a lot, especially lifestyle individuals, or like if we're trying to recomp or diet somebody down right away, I think a lot of them are very focused on the scale, right? I think that's just like a I don't know, dude. It's like almost like a naturally trained thing in most people's brains nowadays, right? I don't know why, right? And there's nothing wrong with it, but I think a good part of being, a good coach is obviously being able, like you said, to talk people through that and showing them the pictures. But I think the first maybe couple months will be just a reiteration I found of every check-in. Hey, remember, you gained a pound, but this is why. This is the potential reasons why. Until we have that before and after, a few weeks, a couple months where it's like, hey, listen, now I can stop kind of telling you to not focus on the scale and look at the difference here in the last 8 weeks. You know what I mean? Um, and when you show them, when like you said, when you compare pictures, that usually kind of tell somebody like, hey, okay, I get it. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, for sure.
um, all right, I got two more. What do you think is the most overrated and underrated supplement that somebody could use for their health?
For their health.
Yeah, so I guess say somebody's on a cycle, and what would you say is the most underrated, and then what's the most overrated?
I don't know. Um, I don't know. Like, there's like a handful of essentials that I wouldn't say are necessarily underrated. Um,
Yeah,
Oh,
I'll
you know
I'll
what I'll
say
say for underrated is DIM, right? A lot of people are quick to throw in a prescription estrogen blocker or anti-aromatase inhibitor, and sometimes the DIM is definitely the answer. Right? Like, you have people on TRT who switched over from Arimidex, half a milligram twice a week, to
yep,
200 milligrams of DIM, plus the plus year the gluconate or whatever the fuck. That brought them within a normal range. And again, the benefit of that over a prescription is you're not going to have the potential risk of impacting your lipids that estrogen drugs do.
right.
So yeah, very good one.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, your client has the blood work to show it.
Good.
His estradiol went down what, like 30 points or something?
I don't remember exactly what
Yeah, it was crazy amount though.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's happened more than once at this point. I've had
yeah,
other
it's
people.
awesome. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I would say an overrated one is milk thistle.
Yeah, that's a good, really good one actually.
Everybody swears it's going to cover their liver and all the parts of the liver, and like, dude, it's like people have been taking that since like before we started trading, like for liver, right? But
Yeah,
like nowadays, we know like you need NAC and TUDCA, and milk thistles is an important part, but it's not the end all be all, right? For for the liver, but I would say that's definitely like one of the most overrated ones, without a doubt. Underrated, I do agree, Dim. I would have said bergamot a few years ago, but I feel like that's a pretty big staple now. Um, but like even like 5, 6 years ago, not many people were using it. Man, the underrated one. is that's much harder. Um,
Mhm.
I would have said creatine too 5, 6 years ago. Now I feel like a lot of people kind of
Yeah,
understand
everybody takes
the
a
science
yeah,
behind it. But I'll go with milk thistle is definitely one of the most overrated.
agreed.
Um, and then my last question I had was, what do you think is harder to coach, a serious competitor or a serious lifestyle client?
Harder to coach?
Yeah.
I mean, serious in either category is gonna be a pleasure. It's
Right.
just a bodybuilder is gonna ultimately require more attention because of competing, so
Yep.
I guess by default, that, like, makes them harder because 'cause you're just putting in more effort, you have to peak
Right.
out, pay
Yep.
attention to every fine detail, whereas, like, serious lifestyle competitor, you're not getting him stage when you're not peaking him, right? So, like, if he's just executing every week, he's gonna be pretty simple to match.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I would agree. I was going to say, like, if they're both serious, they're both going to be listening to the coach, right? Um, other than other than that, um, I would say that it would be the competitor, not from the fact of more difficult in the sense that they're being difficult. Like you said, there's just a lot more in play, right? There's a
Mhm,
lot more riding on the end result. And that's why it
mhm.
becomes more difficult. I think it becomes more difficult from, I guess, a self pressure standpoint,
Yeah, fair.
that as well. So, but that's all I had. They were good questions. What do you
Yeah,
got?
when to push and pull back in prep.
So it's a good question. I feel like a lot depends on the client's feedback, right? And also where their level of body fat is, how long the prep's been going on so far, the response you're getting. Um, I think if somebody's been dieting from 20 weeks out and you're around 8 weeks out and you know their conditioning's ahead, I think in a sense that, and everything's going well, they're improving. I think, in a sense of pulling back, maybe you give them a week of a diet break, right? Where you increase their food by a certain amount, maybe cut their cardio by a good amount, just give their overall nervous system and inflammation and whatnot a break. I think that's pulling back in a sense to kind of get them further when you go in after a week or so and push them again. Um, I think another scenario could be, certain PEDs are in play, their sleep quality and duration's kind of going down, right? I feel like we see on our check-ins, like their quality's gone from an 8 or 9 to like a 4 or 5, and their duration's gone from like 8 hours to 5 or 6. And we ask them and they say, like, hey, my sleep quality's gone down. Maybe their food we just pushed their food down a week or two ago, their cardio up, a few minutes or whatever, right? We pushed their cardio a bit. Might be okay. Listen, you haven't lost any weight. We're not really seeing a difference in your photos, and you just kind of look flatter after like a week or two of pushing. Maybe then you pull back, right? Maybe you give them a few high days in a row and monitor them after each one. Maybe you give them a diet break for a week, cut their cardio for a few days, or leave their diet where it's at. So there's a lot of different things, but I think the ultimate factor of that is what somebody looks like, and their feedback is number one.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
well,
if you're 20 weeks out and you start your prep and at 16 weeks out you tell us, "Hey, I'm fatigued, I'm tired," then my 99% of the time, I'm positive I can speak for you too. We're going to be like, "Hey, this probably isn't for you."
mhm,
But if like you're at 4 weeks out and it's like, okay, we've been pushing for the last 6 weeks, it's like, all right, maybe it is like your legs are feeling like they're 1,000 pounds. Okay, maybe it is time to time to pull back a little.
yeah, very finally, can you get pregnant while competing?
We sure can.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's gonna be heavily genetic and how much and how long you're running gear, and the effect on your sperm production and motility. So I gotta be thinking, and we know guys that, including Steve, that have gotten their wives and significant others pregnant while on cycle. Say you're just putting it out, right? You're a bodybuilder, you compare, you want to start having kids. Nothing says that you need to like walk away from bodybuilding if you have to end up going on fertility drugs like HCG or HMG or clomiphene. Uh, Steve, and I mean, I'm somebody who did it, right? I bodybuilded, I went on just TRT, and I got my wife pregnant with the HCG and clomiphene. Steve and I both help multiple people do it with their wives. Um, yeah, it's just like I've seen people literally be like, "Oh yeah, I'm just gonna like take some time off and like go have a family." It's like, all right, well, I know you also love bodybuilding and you're serious about this, and there's nothing else stopping you from continuing. Are you gonna throw everything away when literally all you have to do is potentially, possibly not even have to come off this entirely and give it a shot and see how it works and take some time from it. And again, HMG is much stronger and so yeah, you could definitely compete in.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, 100%. I'll tell. I mean, with our first, I mean, you know all this, but for everybody listening, our first, obviously, I was on a ton of fertility stuff. I was on the HEG, HMG, Clomid, cut the test out, felt like complete shit. Took like 4 months, and then I stayed on everything for six. Um, Second daughter was just on 200 milligrams of test, or 30 a day, so 210 a week. And then with the twins now, I was on a good bit of test. I was on more than more than HRT, as you know. But um, and I mean, maybe it was the amount. Maybe it was just being on more tests. It was like, hey, we're gonna split in two. But uh, but yeah, it's very possible. Yeah,
Curtis agrees. Do classic competitors need to train glutes? Yeah, absolutely you do.
you see Matt's fucking ass. What the fuck?
Yeah, yeah, you're like legitimately train glutes tomorrow. Don't train better.
Yeah.
It's like any other muscle, dude. You gotta, like, what do judges always look for? Striated glutes. Genetic, gonna have striated glutes. Like Samson Dowda or Mr. Olympia doesn't have striated glutes, right? Like, or he doesn't have striations. However, and even we're gonna hope
Oh yeah. Yeah.
if he's training them, he's gonna make them more dug out. Just
Oh yeah. Yeah, and how many good competitors do we see that don't have striations, but the judges can damn well see if there's fat on your ass or not. Like if it, like you said, genetically, if you don't have striations, like for me, I don't have a ton of striations. I have them more on my lower glutes, like into the glute ham tie-in. But my ass has always been like glutes have always been fat free when I've competed. The judges can see that. Like when you can see like veins and just paper skin thin on the glutes, they know where there's fat and not. You know what I mean? Um, so like you said, you got to train your glutes, of course.
yeah. Yeah. So
I think
yeah, I'm
it's
a big believer of it just because I do think no matter how serious you are, you need to have a little bit of life and do something outside of bodybuilding.
Yep.
So I encourage it. People in prep that have those two up to a certain point.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, I do think it's important. I think, look, every go check, but like, I do think you're gonna develop some level of real like 17 years.
100%. Yeah, especially the off season. I mean, like Matt said too, even like a competitor client going into prep, depending who it is, right? Maybe you pull it out, you have it till 20 weeks out. Maybe you start lowering their food a little bit beforehand to kind of mitigate the extra calories from the cheat meal, get them a little bit ahead. But, you know, in the off season, yeah. I mean, maybe after prep, it'll take a few weeks for us to build that back in, right? Maybe let's get the food up. Let's see, especially if it's a first time competitor and we don't really know how they're going to handle post show in a reverse without a show date in mind. I might wait a couple weeks before we like set that cheat meal in stone on the plan because I want to see like how are you going to stick to your plan? You know what I mean? Because what happens if that cheat meal turns into a full binge and it's something they've been craving for 5 months? You know what I mean? But after that, it's like, yeah, you're gonna have there should be a free meal in your plan. Now, if like say mid off season, we're going through a diet phase, there's been times where I've told somebody, listen, let's just cut it out for like, and we'll do it every other week instead of every week. You know what I mean? But it's still like you said, it offers that balance and that life outside of bodybuilding, which I mean, obviously we both know is very important.
As an athlete, what do you find prep?
Um, I would say once that true prep fatigue kicks in, and just go, you gotta still go through your day to day. Gotta go to work, gotta, you know, do everything else your day to day requires. And a lot of the things don't, know you're in prep, right? Like, or they don't care. So you got to still kind of show up and do your best despite being utterly tired and fatigued and just brain dead.
Yeah, to me when I'm in prep and like it's starting to get like I don't tolerate like somebody who's just around. Like I don't act in my head. I'm just getting fucking serious. What
Yeah.
are we doing here?
Yeah.
Getting to that point, people. It's like we're just so moronic. You saw, like, for example, if somebody's like trying to merge into way, getting off an exit, getting onto the highway from the service road, and they're going like 30 miles an hour. It's like, dude, you're like, you have to get to the fucking speed of traffic. So you have that whole fucking, that entire lane. This shit
Yeah.
just drives me up a wall. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Jason Food said preach.
Hmm, that's all I have.
Oh wow. Anybody else have any questions for us? I feel like we're
Right.
getting better though at answering the questions because we just answered like 12 questions.
Yeah, pretty quick. Yep.
Yeah, 45 and for about 45 minutes too. Not bad.
All right. I guess that's it.
All right, guys. Well, be back in a few weeks. Appreciate everybody listening.